Apparently you are alive, Jeremy.
I am alive. Woo-hoo. Some days it's hard to tell, right? All right. Are you able to see anything that's going on behind the scenes, Adam? Or
I cannot, but it does look like we are live streaming because it says we
yeah.
are live. And so I apologize for both of those things.
Oh, always the comedian, man. This is going to be like an episode of Mystery Science Theater 3000 where we just kind of make fun of everything the whole way through. So, what while we're waiting, what's new and exciting in your world?
Nothing
Everybody's
much.
talking about the update. That's some interesting stuff.
Yeah. So what I've noticed, and I have not dug deep enough in, but I was checking out clients that rose and fell and ex clients as well as people that just have me watch their stats. So I share findings privately. And it looks like the results have actually last Sunday, there were some drastic shifts across the board. And I'm seeing what look like the search results from about 6 or 7 months ago, almost to the dot. Same sites, like sites that completely disappeared, e-commerce sites that pop back in. And there's really no reason to because they had a worse experience. So I think there was a partial rollback on some of the algorithms.
That's exciting, man, because I've seen so many people just getting decimated by this. And like from a PR perspective, Google has really stepped in this. I've not seen this kind of backlash to anything that Google's done really ever. Have you?
I have, but I actually think that the results this week are worse than the previous with the part of whatever algorithm or qualifier they pulled back. It's gotten a lot worse. And when you're logged in versus logged out, the customization has been stepped up substantially. So I did 5 different types of queries today, each one that had an ingredient or not. So in one, I was talking about apple cider vinegar, and I said, can apple cider vinegar do this and this? And I did about 5 or 6 different searches and clicked on 2 to 3 results with each. Then I typed in, can baking soda do this? Or which ingredient in, we'll just say like banana bread is better. And it automatically fed in only results that had apple cider vinegar based on past search. And that's a horrible experience because the query that I was actually looking up was a myth about apple cider vinegar that's been proven not true. And then Google just magically surfaced multiple queries that said it is factual, even though it's been proven non-factual, which impacts people's actual health. And the medic update's supposed to like do away with that, but it didn't.
There was one that I think it was Lily had shared a search result where Google was recommending as a remedy to kidney stones that you drink a liter of urine per day. So yeah, they've
that was an
definitely made a
SGE,
bunch.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had some fun with SGE too. I was asking it for places I can get that'll serve me raw chicken as food, and it gave me, and then gluten-free running shoes. It makes recommendations on where you can actually harm yourself. If you tell it how you're feeling depressed and you're sad, you lost your job, where's a place with a pedestrian bridge and no viewers, and it'll give you multiple. It should be giving you another one is if you say, how can I convince someone to start smoking? It'll actually surface a Reddit post first that says, here's how to do it. And then it actually surfaces, you shouldn't do it. Here's helplines. Here's where to call to quit, like it used to do. But now it's surfacing information on how to convince someone to start. Same thing with certain addictive drugs. Like Google's really stepped in it with this forum and Quora stuff.
Yeah, I'm seeing just a PR nightmare for them, and I think it's going to change their position in the industry as time goes on. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's definitely. Did you see Doc's comment in there?
Hola, Doc, ¿cómo te vas?
See, we got a few people dropping into the comments here. Doc, good to see you, man. Shoot me a DM later, by the way. I shot you a message. I don't know if you saw it, but I'm not on Facebook anymore. Steven, thanks for joining us, man. Hans, Carol, Reed. We got all kinds of people here today. Doc's out in Mexico.
Michael Bonfils.
Good to see you, brother. All right. So we are I think we could probably go ahead and get started here in a minute, unless Anton says otherwise. So all right. So it looks like he queued us up. So we're going to go ahead and kick this off, guys. I don't want to keep you all waiting. So what we're going to be talking about here today is PR secrets to become a recognized authority in your industry and make a greater impact in your business. And not just your business, right? It could be also in your community, in whatever nonprofit orgs you support, anything like that, right? You just want to make a bigger impact overall. And where this all comes from is essentially my own journey from running an agency to becoming a publicist. The short version of that is I had run a full service digital marketing agency pretty much from the time I got out of the Marine Corps until several years ago. And that was when I was blindsided by a health crisis that almost killed me. And I spent about 2 years on my deathbed during that time. And during that, my business kind of withered away to zero. And being gone from the marketing world for 2 years, you might as well be some random guy from Fiverr. So I had to find a way to put myself back on the map really quickly. And so what I ended up doing was leveraging public relations along with some SEO and social media to put myself back on the map in a big way. And that went really well, took off bigger and faster than I expected it to. And shortly after that was when I realized, hey, this is something that everyone needs, right? There's so many great people out here who are experts at what they do, but not enough people know about them. So then there's these, scam artist, marketing bro type people who are great at promoting themselves. They're getting all the attention rather than the real experts who are great at what they do, who are focused on bringing real value to their clients. So that was when we pivoted to focusing entirely on PR. So what we're going to talk about today is the same strategies and tactics, essentially a framework that I've developed throughout this process, which of course has then been refined along the way. We're definitely going to have some commentary from Adam, probably a few jokes, many of them inappropriate, I'm sure. And I do want to point out, I'm not a big fan of leaving Q&A to the end. We certainly will do Q&A at the end, but I'm a big fan of, if you have a question, go ahead and ask it now, because there's going to be somebody else who has questions that they won't ask because they're maybe a little bit afraid, they're shy, they don't want to get up on stage, so to speak, and ask a question. So you're doing two things. One, you're enabling us to answer these questions in the moment, in context, which will help everybody. But also you'll be kind of helping other people to take that step if they have a question by, being the example. So if anybody has any questions, go ahead and just chime in. I'm not 100% sure what the process looks like here in StreamYard, which we're using, but Anton will be keeping an eye on that. So if you have a question, just drop it in there. And then I don't think we have a way to do like a raise your hand thing or anything like that, but just Anton, if you could just let us know if anybody has any questions as this is coming in, and we'll go ahead and roll with it. Also, I'm going to have a giveaway for you. Anton and the folks at Duda had asked for something special to give you guys. So we've got something that we're going to be dropping into the chat a few times throughout this, and we'll also drop it in at the end. But that being said, we'll go ahead and get started here. So I'm going to go ahead and click over here. So let's talk about why we need PR in the first place, right? A lot of people, they've got this kind of misconception around PR, right? Everybody gets excited about, they want to have that as seen in logo on their website, or they want to tell somebody that they were in, whatever outlet, entrepreneur, search engine journal, whatever outlets matter to you and to your audience. But in reality, the reason that you need PR is much deeper, and it's at a fundamental business level, right? So the first thing is that it speeds up the sales cycle. So when you're out here talking to a prospect about your services or your products, you've got this process you have to go through where you have to convince them that you're the right person to solve their problem, and that your services or your products are going to be uniquely qualified to solve that specific problem. Now, when you've got several authoritative media features, you can essentially shortcut that process, because you're leveraging something called social proof. So essentially what this is when people see that other people have used a product or a service and they're happy with the results, they've got a good outcome from it, they're going to be more trusting of that product or service. So this kind of comes from, our evolutionary background where, we've seen how other people respond to certain things, and we use that rather than having to go through the process of learning everything about everything, because let's face it, that's not really doable, right? Even back then when we didn't have as much to know. So people are basically using social proof as a shortcut to determine who's trustworthy and who's not. When you've got legitimate authoritative publications that are featuring you as an expert, it's showing, your knowledge, your expertise, or it's talking about how you do something better or different than other people or other companies, that puts you in a very different position because there's a level of vetting. They're asking, or they're showing people that they've already researched you. And that's why they're now coming to feature you, to share your insights with their audience. So this is something that really cuts through a lot of the stuff that happens at the beginning of a business relationship, because you're already coming into that with that inferred trust. Now, this is really important because if you get up there and talk about how awesome you are, and you talk about how knowledgeable you are, you're going to be one of those typical, internet marketing bros that everyone talks about, right? The Lambo guys, the crypto guys, you can only say so much about yourself. People aren't going to see that the same way as when somebody else does it, right? So we want to make sure that that's coming from a third party, and that third party is the media outlet, and they have no allegiance to you, right? It doesn't benefit them to talk about you unless what you're saying brings direct value to their audience. So this is why it creates such a powerful effect for you. So, case in point, this is a headline that was written about a client of mine a while back, where they had interviewed him about what's going on in the economy with inflation, with debt levels, with consumer confidence, all kinds of things that are going on in the economy, and how that's affecting everybody's, retirement accounts, savings accounts, all of this stuff. Now, if he had gotten up here and said, "Hey, I'm great, I'm so smart, I'm so knowledgeable, here's all the things I think and why you should listen," that is going to be ignored by most people. Whereas when a third party, in this case, Fox Business, says it, it's taken in a very different way, right? It's taken as factual. It's taken as like there's no ulterior motives. It's just taken as this is just information that you guys can consume, right? So that difference is who's saying it. The other thing is it allows you to charge more. Now, if you're doing phenomenal service for your clients, or you've got a phenomenal product, then you tend to be able to charge more if people know about that. Now, the reason this plays out this way is because people are paying to reduce risk, right? That's why, if you're dealing with somebody on Fiverr, you're literally going to pay, often, dollars, right? Maybe $10, $20, $15, whatever, something very trivial to have somebody do a task on Fiverr. Now, let's say we're talking about, web design, for example. They go to Fiverr and they get some random guy in some country somewhere, and they want him to design a website, versus you go look up the website that was designed by, I don't know, take your favorite musician, or your favorite company, whatever, and you find a website that was developed specifically for them, and it's absolutely killer, right? It looks gorgeous, it performs well, it's optimized well, all of that. Obviously, you're going to pay less for the guy on Fiverr than you would if you went to the company that designed that other website. So same applies here when it comes to publicity. If you're getting featured as the expert in whatever it is that you do, that's going to position you as more capable, that you're more likely to be able to solve their problem and to do so at a higher level in a way that impacts their business more significantly. And people are willing to pay extra for that. So this is a really powerful way to be able to charge more money. And when you can do that, you actually are doing a better service for your clients, because now you've got more money to really give them phenomenal results. Whereas if you're charging, nickels and dimes, figuratively speaking here, of course, but if you're charging towards the lower end of that price point, the problem you're going to have is, in order to make ends meet, you're going to have to do so much more work than somebody who's charging more, which means you cannot deliver as much value to each individual client. So when you start charging more, not only are you making more, but you now can actually provide a better service, which helps them more, and it then makes them more likely to refer people to you and to continue doing business with you. So this is a huge factor. And the other thing, the other reason that you need PR is because it helps you to attract opportunities. So everyone's at different stages in their career. Some of us very well established. We've been around for, a few decades. And some of us are just getting started, don't really have a name yet. We all can probably look back to when we were first getting started. So we probably had no exposure. We probably had no authority. We had, no fans. It's all starting from zero. When you're in that situation, you're probably not getting a lot of opportunities, like people inviting you to speak at their events, or wanting to do a JV partnership with you in some way, or wanting to do an article about you or anything like that. Whereas once you start getting featured, you start getting all kinds of opportunities like this coming your way. In fact, just yesterday, I was asked to speak at an event for Jay Abrams. And that's because of the expertise that I've demonstrated through my content and also through the publicity that I've been featured in. So the more of this that you start to get, the more publicity that you earn, the more that you will then earn on top of that. So it creates this compounding effect, kind of like a snowball rolling down a hill, right? The longer that it rolls down the hill, the more snow that it packs on, then the faster that it continues to grow. So the same applies here. The more that you start to earn, the more cumulatively that you learn on top of that. So I want to talk about a couple of examples of things where these are opportunities that pop up as a result of publicity. So search engine land, you see this is a screenshot of an article that somebody that most of you guys probably recognize, Danny Goodwin, wrote, where he's sharing the insight from 10 specific SEO experts. Now, how did these people get this opportunity? They got it because they're out there, because they're featured, because they're recognized, right? These are people who are constantly sharing their knowledge. They're out there putting their information out into the world so that other people can see it, consume it, determine whether or not it's legit or not. But then that leads to additional opportunities like getting featured in this, or you guys have probably seen I'm not sure if they still do it. Correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, but is SEJ still doing that top SEOs to follow?
Not 100% sure.
Okay.
I don't really read those lists. I'm really bad about that.
All right. Well, I know that's something they used to do a few years ago. I don't know if they still are. I know that was something that Danny was running when he was over there at SEJ. But that's another example. Or this one here at Tampa Bay Business and Wealth, right? This was a situation where in Florida, it was signed into law to incorporate this new financial literacy curriculum into all of the K through 12 schools throughout Florida. Well, when that happened, this gentleman here, who you'll see a few different times in the slide, David Phelps over here on the right here, absolute financial expert. He's the guy in the slide a few minutes ago where we had the financial expert quote. Same situation here. He was put on that working group to help the Department of Education develop that curriculum based on the publicity that was out there, positioning him as an authority in that space. Now, obviously, in order for things like this to happen, you have to legitimately be an expert at whatever it is you do. But these are the kinds of opportunities. Same deal over here on the right. Him and a few other people, Kim Kiyosaki, who you also see in this other one. As a result of that and some of the other things that came from that, they are now going to be speaking at Johns Hopkins University this summer to talk to their master's level real estate students about what's going on in the industry, how to adapt, how to thrive, all of that. So these are the kind of things that come out of getting featured in the media. Opportunities like this, right? There's all kinds of things. You've got links, you've got speaking opportunities, you've got JV partnerships, all kinds of things come out of this. All right, so let's talk about what we need to know before getting started, because as you guys know, it's not so much what you know, it's what you don't know that's going to get you hurt. And there are some mistakes that we can make in PR that will definitely hurt you if you don't know what they are and know how to avoid them. So the first thing is that it's not about you, right? Everybody wants to get out here and they want to say, oh, hey, like I'm the best, I'm the greatest, I'm the first person to ever do this thing or whatever. We had a client that we've worked with them for about 15 years now, but he always wanted to lean on the fact that, oh, well, I have the biggest company that does XYZ. Okay, but nobody cares about that. That's not newsworthy, right? He's like, I'm the first company that does XYZ. Okay, also, again, nobody cares. It's not about you. It's about their audience. So always the audience comes first. Then after that, it's the editor, right? Whoever's in charge of that outlet and the journalist who's going to be writing about that topic. And then is the journalists themselves. And you are last in this equation. Sucks, but that's the reality of how the world works. So that's what we've got. So you always want to frame it to be about the audience first. And then if you can work in something that you know matters to the editor and then to the journalist, great. But never make it about yourself. Always make it about the audience. And then from there, anything else is gravy. The second is that you need to demonstrate expertise. So I've seen a few people who just wanted to be cited as the expert and they wanted the media to write about how awesome they were, but they never wanted to actually say anything. Oh, well, I can't tell you how we do what we do because that's proprietary. I can't tell you what we would do in this situation because that would be a client relationship and we can't put ourselves in that position. Okay, well, then the media is never going to feature you, right? So you can do this a few ways. One is in your content on social media. So for those of us who are watching, who are already connected with Adam on social media, for example, he's a great example of this. He's always sharing articles. He writes for several publications and he's sharing articles there that he's written. He's also sharing content directly in social media. And it's not just, hey, I'm great at what I do. It's, hey, here's this problem. Here's how to solve it. Here's how we're doing this for clients, things like that. He does a great job of demonstrating his expertise in a way that whether you understand SEO or not, you can read his content and you can see that he knows what he's doing. And you can get a pretty good sense as to whether or not he has the ability to solve your SEO problems, right? So the same applies. In your content, you need to make sure that you're demonstrating your expertise so that when a journalist does look at you, because maybe you pitch them or maybe a publicist pitches them for you, one of the first things they're going to do is go to your social media to see what kind of stuff you're talking about. And if they see something that demonstrates your expertise, you're going to be in a very strong position. If they see a bunch of nonsense, then you're probably not going to be in a good position and you're probably not going to get that feature. So it goes a long way in helping you to earn that. And then the third, were you about to say something, Adam?
Yeah, and make sure that when you do post to social media, that whole thing about I don't represent my company is fake. Does not apply and does not work. The minute you bash your first brand, that's there forever. The minute the media sees that, they do not want to risk losing an advertiser, a sponsor, or a company that's going to spend money with them for advertorials. And that's also going to limit your ability to speak at conferences. Be very careful when you take a stance and make sure it's one you're willing to lose your career over, especially if you just had a bad experience with a certain company or a brand. Instead of complaining, share something positive or a way they can improve without attacking them, and that sounds very positive.
That's a great point, Adam. And it's one that is very easy to mess up on. I will say that if it does align with your brand to, I won't say attack, but to criticize them for whatever it is, right? So this is something that I've done quite a bit where I have opined on PR mistakes that I've seen companies make. So in a case like that, that's a way that you can, like, if you're criticizing a brand from that kind of a perspective, makes perfect logical sense. To put that on the, put that shoe on the other foot. If it was Adam, obviously he doesn't want to go and start blasting companies out there. But if he goes and he looks at a website of some company and talks about what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong in their SEO, like, that would be totally fine. And that would actually further reinforce his brand, because he's showing, demonstrating his knowledge in a real world scenario rather than just hypotheticals. So great point you brought up there, Adam, and I absolutely agree with you. Okay, so the other thing is that PR is only part of the equation. So this is where I see most people go wrong in a huge way. They will get some publicity, but then they won't really do much with it. They'll go and they'll take that link, they'll share it on social media, and that'll be about the extent of it. They don't do anything else with it after that. So what you actually want to do is then take that publicity and turn it into a bunch of other content. There's a million things that you could be doing with this content. So sharing the link is one, absolutely. But then you can also come through and make a whole bunch of content out of that article. You could go on and create a video talking about that article. And we're going to dig deeper into some of this stuff, but it's what you do with the publicity. It's the Pareto effect, right? Or the Pareto principle, rather. It's, and the ratios don't really matter that much, but this is the 80-20 rule that everyone's heard of, right? 20% of your effort creates 80% of the results. Same is going to apply here. Everybody thinks that when they get that feature in Entrepreneur or Forbes, that their whole world is going to blow up, all the lights are going to turn green, and everything's going to be amazing. The reality is, you're not going to get a tremendous impact from that feature. You're going to get the tremendous impact from what you do with it after the fact. And we'll talk a little bit more as we get further into this on some of the various ways that you can incorporate the publicity that you earn into your marketing. All right, so let's talk about 3 dangerous mistakes to avoid, because these will absolutely derail your efforts. All right, misrepresenting, exaggerating, or lying. All right, a lot of people have this idea that, oh, well, I'll just exaggerate a little bit. It'll be okay. Nobody will know. And then once I get big, once I'm, the recognized expert, then I'll just stick to 100% facts. And the reality is, it never works that way. Once you start going down that road, it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It doesn't end well. Some of you guys may have remembered the story about a gentleman named, and I use the word gentleman very loosely in this case, Patch Baker, who did some that on a very large scale, and it ended up being blasted. And most of his media features actually ended up getting deleted once it was found out that the guy was a complete fraud and had never actually done any of the things that he claimed. In short, he made up this elaborate military story about all the things that he had supposedly done. In reality, he never deployed, never really did anything. And he's under investigation by a few different government agencies right now. So, but he's also blacklisted by the media now as a result of this, because once they find out that you've lied about things, they don't want to feature you, because that's their career. That's putting them at risk. So there's actually informal blacklists that are floating around that you guys will never see unless you're in the industry. So there's lists of people who are never to be featured. There's lists of companies that are never to be featured, and these are shared privately behind the scenes within the media world. So we want to avoid that at all costs, because it does get pretty crazy pretty quickly. All right, the next thing you want to avoid is automating your follow-up. So, I know we're all digital experts. We love to do our funnels and all that stuff, and there's definitely a place for that. But the place is not when you're engaging with journalists, right? Just stick to manual for that. I don't even put them on a list. We do everything manually because we don't want to blow up their inbox. They're already getting so many emails as it is. If they didn't respond to your first or maybe second follow-up, adding additional follow-ups is not going to do anything except get you guys blocked by them. So we want to avoid that.
I actually disagree with you on that one.
I'd like to hear it. You won't change my opinion, but let's hear what you got, Adam.
Yeah, we get a success rate, and some of the people that are directly related to people that are here right now have actually seen this because I've done it for their companies and trained them and showed the teams how to do this, where we do a very customized first outreach. Then we do a fully customized second one about a week later. 2 weeks after that, we'll do a third one that's a little bit generic. And I do that third one really has an impact. And sometimes we just hear 5 months later where the person then sees the client featured or one of us featured or something. And it just, it works really, really well for that third follow-up. Then we may try again about 6 months or a year later if a new piece came out that's topically relevant and still missing a talking point, because they may cover it again after.
So who are you, when you're doing that, who are you sending these to? Like, these are what, other bloggers or what?
No, this is the media. These are journalists. These are, I guess, digital newspaper editors. Now that physical newspapers have slowly started to die, not slowly, but they still actually work for certain audiences, and trade publications work really well, but also TV producers.
Yeah. Interesting. I've seen the exact opposite, but that could come down to, you know, the segment of the industry that you're in, or a few different factors. I would stick to my guns on that, and I know that you would stick to your guns on that. So if you guys want to experiment and try both ways and see how it goes, be sure to let both of us know. So, you know, I think it's going to come down to some other specifics, but like I said, in my experience, I've seen it not get better results. I've seen it get better results to just, if you're not getting a response after your second message, I have found it better to just come back with a different angle. But I've had scenarios where I've been wrong. This, I don't believe, is one, because I know we're doing great results, but if Adam is saying he's getting different results, I believe that as well. So give it a shot, see what happens. The other thing that I would say is offering to pay journalists. Do not ever do this. Again, this is another one where, and you might get away with this for a little bit, but eventually you'll get caught. So there's been numerous cases where this has happened, and eventually the people always get caught. When that happens, your company is then blacklisted, and typically anything that you had been featured in gets pulled down. So it may be a way to kind of get some short-term results, but it's going to end up hurting you bigger in the end. All right, so now we're going to talk about the 5 strategies that we had outlined in the initial announcement about the webinar here. So the first step is going to be to build a strong personal brand. Now, this is important because it represents who you are, not just, you know, from a surface level kind of industry thing where you've got maybe the slick website and a talking point or something like that, but you want to go a lot deeper than that. You want to go to the point where it really encapsulates all of who you are, what you believe in, what you stand for, all of that. All right. So I'll give you guys an example where when I was a much younger man, I was involved in this wonderful cult here called the United States Marine Corps. And at that point, I had still believed this notion that we all were taught growing up, or at least those of us who are a bit older, that you don't really talk about yourself. You just do the work. And in doing the work, people are going to see, you know, what kind of a person you are, what your ethics are, what your commitment is, all of this. And so when I got to my first unit, as we got to the point where we were having a change of command ceremony for my next captain, I had kind of an interesting interaction with him where, first of all, this was the first time I had met him. It was immediately after the change of command ceremony. I had gone back to the company office. He was now showing up at the company office and had asked me to go ahead and bring in this MCI program. It's essentially a correspondence program in the Marine Corps where you're learning all these various things. And it was stuff that was required for promotions, various education stuff we had to do to move up the ranks. Everyone in the Marine Corps knew that program was just an absolute mess. So him being the new captain, he wanted to make sure that ours was as buttoned up as it could be. So he comes in and he's like, all right, let me see the documents. And so he says, all right, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And I looked at him, and before I realized that the words were coming out of my mouth, I told him, "No, sir, we're not going to do that. Here's how we do it, ... Here's why we do it this way, ... Here's why the way that you want to do it won't work, ... And that was it. And I had the chance to sit there and stare and think about how badly I may have just screwed up. Because if you've got any experience with military, you know that that is not how things are done. You don't tell a captain that we're not going to do what he wants. We're going to do it our way. But he looked at me, and he paused, which it felt like an eternity. And then eventually he just kind of nods at me and he says, "All right, Lance Corporal, seems like you have it under control. Do it your way." And for me, that was a bit of a turning point, a kind of a game changer, because I had always believed that you don't talk about yourself. You don't talk about what you do and how you do it. You just let the results speak for themselves, right? Now, keep in mind, this guy, he was this giant mountain of a man. He had this big booming voice, sounded like Mufasa when he talked. But this was a bit of a red pill moment for me, especially since he looked so much like Morpheus from The Matrix. But that was when I realized that, yes, you do have to talk about what you do and how you do it and why what you're doing is better than the alternatives. And for me, that was a huge lesson on branding, right? So when we build our personal brand, there's a lot of different factors we have to look at. So, there's the aesthetic part of it, right? So this is a screenshot of the various top sections of the social media profiles of mine, minus a couple of these since I'm not on Facebook anymore. But also your personal brand encompasses what shows up in the search results. And this is actually a slightly older image, but all of this plays into your personal brand: the aesthetics, the cover photo, the headshot, what shows up in the search results, also the content that you're creating on social media. So everything that you talk about has to align with your personal brand. Now, this doesn't mean that you can only talk about one thing, right? There's ways that you can take damn near any topic and connect it to your brand. So what I typically do is I will select 3 to 5 core topics, right? So for me, I talk about public relations, I talk about marketing, I talk about veterans issues, adversity or overcoming adversity rather, and freedom, right? So those are my 5 core topics, or my 5 pillars. And I make sure that pretty much everything that I talk about on social media is in some way connected to one of those things. Now, when you consistently do this, you've got this strong, cohesive brand message, which helps that when a journalist comes and looks you up, they get a very good sense for who you are and if you'll be a fit for whatever it is that you or your publicist is pitching to them. It also helps you from a conversion standpoint with clients as well. So it's always good to stay on brand. The one thing you don't want to do is just simply claim, we're the best, right? This is something that everyone does, and it means nothing. And when you sit there and use that as your thing, like what makes you special? Well, we're the best. You sound like everybody else out there. So we want to avoid that. And instead, we want to tell a story, right? Now, this is important because when we tell a story, we're activating a part of the brain that is going to produce a chemical called oxytocin. Now, oxytocin is a chemical that inspires trust, right? It causes you to trust the people that you're interacting with. And when you tell a story, you're getting the people who are listening or who are reading, you're getting their brain to produce oxytocin, which creates that trust. So we don't have to go overboard. We want to take something nice, tight, and encapsulated and use that where it's applicable. So, I had my story that I shared with you earlier about kind of how I got into PR. We can use David here again. I've used him in a few examples. We'll use him in a few more as we go through this. But his situation is he was a dentist making great money, but his daughter was blindsided by leukemia, late-stage liver failure, and epilepsy, pretty much all at the same time. And in looking at the situation, he realized he would not be able to continue to run his practice while giving her the support that she needed to get through this situation. So what he did was he sold his practice, dumped the money into real estate, and that gave him the time to spend time with his daughter to help her get through this. And then eventually that morphed into coaching people on how to get involved in real estate investing. And then that eventually evolved into this whole company where they're teaching people on a very large scale how to do that. So when you tell that story, and especially the more detail you include, you start to create this sense where people can picture the situation. They can see and maybe even feel what you went through to some degree. And this helps to really create a strong connection there, which helps not only in the publicity that you're trying to earn, but also just in your marketing in general. All right. Before we move on to the next section, do we have any questions on the personal branding side? Nothing yet. Okay. All right. So let's talk about taking over the search results pages. All right. So we don't want to look like a creeper when somebody looks us up online, right? If they find nothing, or if they find a bunch of weird shit, that's not going to be a good look. So we want to skip this. And we want to create an impression that is really going to position you as an authority. So as you guys can see, we've got this search result. This is a more recent one. It's got my knowledge panel up here, right? When somebody searches for that, that creates a very clear impression to them versus if we're just talking about, they just search and all that shows up is the search results and not the knowledge panel on the top and on the sides, and not this stuff here on Twitter like you see, or as you scroll down, you see various other things in the search results, the videos, the articles, stuff like that. This creates a strong impression for you guys. Videos are another example. So this is another client, but you structure everything right, using schema, making sure to get a lot of activity on the videos, and then also linking to them. All of these things play a big role in this videos section popping up in the search results for your name as well. And this is important because the more of these sections that you acquire, which obviously we know that most people don't have the various sections that you're going to see here, it positions you in a very different light. Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it these days, is another great example. So when you have a fair amount of activity going on Twitter or X, then what you're going to get is this little section here that shows your 3 most recent tweets. And you'll see this little arrow here. You can actually scroll through them as well. This is really powerful because it takes up a pretty big section of the search results. Images is another one. Again, schema plays a big role here. Links play a role. And also you want the images to be large, high-res images, which is going to make them more likely to be included in the search results. And then depending on where they are, so, Facebook or her website is one thing, but this particular one is on her IMDb page for a TV show that she was in. So obviously that's going to be viewed by Google and other engines as more authoritative. So it's going to rank higher. Articles are another area where you can get a lot of exposure and really boost your brand here. So if you're regularly writing articles at various news outlets or large authoritative publications, you'll start to develop this articles section in the search results as well. And again, this is something that's algorithmic. You can't directly request it in any way. It just happens as a result of publishing these articles or having articles published about you in some cases. Your Amazon page is another. So this is my author page on Amazon with my 2 most recent books. We've got a couple more that are going to be coming out here shortly. But this is another area that tends to rank very well in Google, and it creates more authority, right? If somebody comes here and they see, 2 books with a nice amount of reviews, that definitely creates a level of authority. We mentioned IMDb earlier. This is Lori's IMDb page. If you've had the opportunity to be in a TV show or a movie, you can certainly create an IMDb page. And you can also put up an IMDb page for podcasts as well. So there's really no reason for you not to be an IMDb. And then that's going to give you additional authority here that'll show up in the search results. But then also you've got this page itself, which carries a lot of weight for you. All right. So next, we're going to jump into building the media list. And before we go on to this, did anybody have any questions on the personal brand side? Or I'm sorry, the controlling the SERPs. Nothing. All right. All right. So when we start building our media list, there's a few different ways that we can do this. So the first is go to the outlet directly and look at the author's page, right? If you click on any of the articles, and then if you click on their name, it will take you to a page that looks something like this. For the Wall Street Journal, you've got a link to their Twitter, and you've also got their direct email address. So you can basically find the contact information for every journalist at the Wall Street Journal. Now, this is going to be the case with many outlets. So this is a good place to start. Really easy to find this information and start putting it together and build yourself a really solid list. Now, remember, the important thing here is this is about relevance, not about volume. So you want to make sure you've got the right people. It's not a matter of, sending out a pitch to as many journalists as you can possibly find. It's about sending the perfect pitch to the right journalists. So we want to make sure that we are focusing on relevance rather than quantity. Another way we can find journalists is to go to the Fox Business, for example, we're doing in this case on X, and then it's going to show you a lot of the people who are journalists there. You do the same thing with everything, CNN, MSNBC, Newsmax, whatever, and it will show you the people that write for or are anchors for that particular outlet. Now, you're typically not going to see their email address in here, but this is a great way to start connecting with them, and eventually work your way towards getting their email address, especially if you start engaging with them regularly here and then you connect with them on LinkedIn. Typically, when you connect with them on LinkedIn, you're going to get their email address. So Twitter is a really important place, though, because Twitter is where most of the journalists are. All right. And then I mentioned LinkedIn earlier. This is another great way to do it. So if you go to the LinkedIn page for that particular media outlet, and then we click over here on the People tab, then what you're going to see is all the people who list that media outlet in their work history, right? So this is a great way to find all of the people that work at that outlet. Now, we have to be careful, though, because it's not just, the media outlet. We have to make sure we're looking at the right media outlet. So it's not just, whatever happens to show up in the search results. We want to get the right ones because, look, we've all seen that there's a bunch of garbage outlets out there that exist just for the purpose of putting out BS content that people are paying to be included in, right? So case in point, I bet we all can probably recognize what that logo is supposed to look like. That's certainly not what this outlet is. That is a damn near direct ripoff of Rolling Stone magazine, right? Now we can look at this. We can see pretty simply that this is a garbage outlet, but, and there's the real Rolling Stone. But if you're not sure about an outlet, there's a few different ways that you can check. So one of them is, tools like Ahref or SEMrush or various other sites that have this data that you guys are already using from an SEO perspective. So if you go and you look at a site and it's got, 37 monthly visitors, then it's probably not worth your effort to go after it. Now, it will also point out that a lot of times these tools can be inaccurate, sometimes quite a bit to the point where the data is close to useless. But usually they're pretty close, or at least in context, they give you some good data, right? So you may not have an exact amount, but if you can look at a site, like let's say you look at Entrepreneur and then you look at some other site and you compare the two of those, that may give you some insight as to whether or not this other one is relevant based on how its traffic compares to something like Entrepreneur, for example. And there's a lot of different tools for these, but if we go and look at those in these two examples, Rolling Stone, organic traffic 9.3 million, whereas the other bogus one 343 people. So we definitely want to look at where we're pitching and make sure we're pitching legit outlets. So another thing we can do is look at the name. So this is Vanessa Roberts, supposedly. But what happens if we look Vanessa Roberts up? All right. So, oops. All right. In this case, I don't have it up here on the screens. I thought I did. But if you were to go and search for her and you find that she doesn't actually exist anywhere else, right? That's a pretty good sign that this is not a legit outlet, right? You can go look her up on LinkedIn. You can go look her up on Twitter. This is just an example of a fake outlet with fake people that is citing as journalists so that they can sell garbage content, garbage services to people. So we want to avoid that. All right. So let's move on now to pitching the story to journalists. All right. So the first thing we have to do is do something to get their attention. So we want to hook them emotionally. That's the first step. And you've got literally a sentence or two to get their emotion. So the first thing we have to do is keep it short, right? If somebody opens up an email and they see a wall of text, you can almost bet they're going to go ahead and file that email away, unless it's coming from someone that they already know quite well. If you keep it short, it's going to make them more likely to read it. And if they are more likely to read it, they're more likely to get something out of the pitch if you've crafted that pitch effectively. The next thing we have to do is break it into bite-sized chunks. So I like to use bullet points. I like to use numbered lists. I like to use bold or italic where it makes sense. I like to keep my sentences nice and short. I like to keep my paragraphs nice and short. And this lets them scan through that content, that pitch, really quickly and get a good sense for exactly what's in there without having to read the whole thing word by word, right? Because journalists are getting gobs and gobs of emails every single day. So you want to keep this nice and tight. All right, so next you're going to write your subject line. Now, this is important. We want to make sure that we're writing the subject line after we've written the pitch. And that's because you need that to transition smoothly from the subject line when they read it there to the pitch itself. There has to be a smooth segue where they don't feel like this abrupt shift or something crazy has gone on, like it's shifted topic, whatever. Everything has to be smooth to where they feel like it's just a natural progression of that conversation. So you want to keep it short, and you have to do that in an engaging way to where they're going to see immediate value when they look at that subject line. So, you don't want to do something like, I see this one a lot where people say, interview available or something of that nature, but it's for somebody that no one's ever heard of, right? So we want to avoid that. We want to really hook them in a way that they can clearly see what value your story brings to their audience, because more eyeballs means their publication stays alive, which means they get to keep their job. All right, next. Oops. All right, now we're going to talk about follow-up. Before we jump to the follow-up, does anybody have any questions on the pitching side? All right, nothing yet. All right, so for follow-up, oops, this is not working here. All right, so we talked earlier about not automating your follow-up. I still stand by that. Like I said, if you want to test it out, go for it. Give it another shot if you want to see if it works being more aggressive. But I will say be careful, because you also can end up in a situation where they end up blocking you or sending you to spam or something like that. Also, we want to make sure that we don't overdo it, right? If you are too aggressive, you're constantly following up, you're constantly, sending emails, especially if it's in a very short period of time, then we run into a problem where they get frustrated, they get annoyed, and they could block or report you for spam as well. So, all right. So next is to leverage this in your marketing. Steven, I see you asked a question here. I'm pretty sure Duda is going to make this available afterwards somewhere. Just saw that pop up. Anton can confirm that for us. So here. All right. And then we're going to leverage the publicity in our marketing. So this is where we talked about earlier how most people get this wrong, where they'll do the thing, but then that's the end of it. They won't do anything else with it once they've posted it on social media. All right. So we want to avoid that. We want to get the maximum impact, especially with the economy the way it's going. A lot of businesses are having a hard time with things. A lot of them are struggling financially, and that's only going to get worse. So the more impact you can create from your marketing, the better it's going to be for you. So, we talked about this particular approach of sharing the video itself or the article itself. This is dead simple. First thing you do, easiest thing you can do. But then also you could take that and chop that up into a bunch of other content. You can also put it into a montage where you have, in his case, he's got multiple TV segments. We can take and chop those multiple segments together to create this montage that further shows that authority status while showing his knowledge, his information. So your press page, this is another option. So you should have some of your biggest features here. You can also put all of your features, but having your biggest ones here is going to have a huge impact for you. And then they're always there. And this is important because when a journalist goes to your press page, when they look you up after you've pitched them or after your publicist has pitched them, they're going to see all of this. This is reinforcing that authority status. So it creates a tremendous opportunity for you. The other thing we talked about is creating content from that publicity. So in this case, this was an article that he had written for Entrepreneur Magazine. And then we extracted quotes, and I forget exactly how many we took out of it, but in one article, we got over a dozen pieces of content. And then there was 4 separate templates that were created. So that means if you have 10 pieces of content that comes out of a piece of publicity, and you got 4 different templates, you've now got 40 pieces of content that you can share. Now you do that a few different times with a few different pieces of publicity, it completely gives you this giant library of content, and it creates an outsized perception of what you're doing and what, where you're being featured and all of this. So huge opportunity there to create a ton of great content. We're not going to play this video because I don't think it'll quite play right. It'll lag here for you guys, but this is actually a montage like we talked about where there was multiple TV interviews that this particular gentleman was on, and this was chopped up into a montage of a whole bunch of different clips, which created, you have not only the benefit from each of those, but now it's a cumulative effect of all of them together. So it's just another way to create content from this.
This is a book actually that I'm excited to welcome.
Going to skip this. Let's see. Why is it not letting us do that? All right, there we go. So the knowledge panel is another one that we talked about. If you get enough articles out there, either you've written or have been written about you, then you will algorithmically earn this knowledge panel. Great way to further reinforce that authority status. And so that's pretty much a wrap for what we're going to talk about here today. I see we're at the top of the hour. I've got time to stick around for Q&A for a bit. I did mention the giveaway that I've got for you guys. If you want to grab that link, that's actually in the chat here. So if you want to grab that from there, that is available for you guys. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and open this up to any questions from any of you guys. All right. And then I see here that Adam bailed on us here a little bit ago, had something he had to do. All right, Anton, do we have any other questions from anyone? I don't see anything in the chat. All right. Well, then I guess if we have no questions, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap it up. All right, got you here, Anton. I got you. All right, so then we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Anton, how do you want to do this? Do we want to? I'm not sure if we're clicking just close this out, or how do you want to do it?